Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Mallory D. McCoy, and welcome to this special series, The Telepathy Narrative: Who Gets to Tell the Story? This series exists because of my son. My journey with him, learning him, understanding him, and witnessing the ways he communicates beyond what we've been taught has expanded me in ways I didn't even know were possible. And through this journey, I've had to ask deeper questions about communication, about spirituality, and about truth. During this series, I'll be sharing experiences, reflections, and observations that challenge the way I understand all three of these concepts. And this is not about having all the answers because I promise you I don't. This is about challenging all of us to be willing to listen in a different way. May this moment meet you exactly where you are. May you take what resonates, reflect on what doesn't, and remain open to what is unfolding. And it is so. Let's move forward. There was a moment during my time at Highlands Church that stayed with me. Actually, I should say all of the moments have stayed with me, but this particular moment wasn't a part of the formal conversation that I was having with Pastor Joe. It wasn't directed at me, but I heard it clearly. There was a side conversation happening. Actually, our conversation was stopped so the side conversation could take place. And I heard about a movie opportunity based on the book that Pastor Joe had written, Decoding Cody, described as the Christian version of the telepathy tapes. And I clutched pearls, figuratively. I didn't have pearls on, but I clutched pearls because that phrase carries weight, not just in what it says, but in what it assumes. Here's what I've come to grips with about the assumptions. It assumes that telepathy is something that can be owned, shaped, and reframed to fit a specific belief system. It assumes that an experience, especially one as complex and nuanced as telepathic communication, can be filtered through one lens and then presented back as truth. And that's where the question becomes unavoidable. Who gets to tell the story? Because right now, what I'm seeing is a pattern. And being neurospicy myself, I'm really good at seeing patterns. Children are having experiences. Parents are witnessing these experiences. Educators are noticing patterns. And then institutions are stepping in. Frameworks are stepping in. And that's where interpretation is beginning, because these frameworks and institutions are stepping into a lived experience. Sometimes, a lot of times, especially now, the interpretation is becoming louder than the experiences themselves. So let me just say, I'm not questioning whether people are well-intended. I believe that many people in this space genuinely care, and I believe that they are trying to make sense of something that doesn't necessarily fit neatly into what they've been taught. But intention and impact are not the same thing. Essentially, when you take an experience that belongs to a child or a young adult that doesn't belong to you initially, and then you interpret it through a pre-existing framework, and then you present that interpretation as the explanation, you are no longer just observing. You are shaping the narrative. And when that narrative is then positioned as the Christian version of the telepathy tapes, we have to pause and ask, what is being centered? Is it the child's experience, or is it the framework being used to explain it? Because those are not the same thing. And this is where it becomes even more complex, because the person leading this narrative is not a parent of a telepathic child. He is not living this experience day in and day out. He doesn't wake up and go to sleep with this experience in his paradigm. He's only interpreting it, he's researching it, framing it, and presenting it. And again, that doesn't automatically make it wrong, but it does raise an important question about proximity, because there's a difference between studying something and living it. There's a difference between observing and being in relationship with the experience. And when those two things are positioned as equal, or when observation is elevated above lived experience, we have to ask why. That's what I'm asking. The people closest to the experience should not be the ones spoken over. And I even say this with a doctorate in education on my resume. Because I have a doctorate doesn't mean I know everything and that I'm the smartest person in the room when I enter it. I always stay curious about everything in life and I stay consistently teachable. So that's the tension that I felt, not just in the space that we were having the meeting, but in the larger conversation. I know that parents have written books about their children and their experience with their children. I've seen families documenting this lived experience. And yet, while in this conversation that I was having, I heard it positioned that this particular story stood apart, or his storytelling stood apart because of the research, because of the ability to build a case, because he has a background in law. And that didn't sit right with me. When does articulation become authority? When does the ability to explain something become more valued than the experience itself? And we have to be honest about the systems that we're operating in. Because historically, voices that sound a certain way, that carry a certain authority, that come from certain backgrounds, are more readily accepted as credible, even when they are not the ones living the experience. That's not accidental, that's patterned. And if we're not aware of that, we risk repeating that pattern, especially in spaces that are claiming to do something new. Telepathy, if we're going to take it seriously, is already challenging the way we understand communication, consciousness, and connection in this part of our human timeline. Because telepathy is not new to consciousness. Telepathy is not a new concept. People used to communicate telepathically as a primary form of communication. So why would we take this expansive thing and immediately narrow it? Why would we take something that is showing us possibility and confine it to one interpretation? When you do that, you're not expanding it, you're containing it. That's where my question becomes real simple. Are we trying to understand people with a telepathic gift, or are we trying to make them make sense to us? Because those are also two very different intentions, and they lead to two very different outcomes. Now, I'm not here to define telepathy. I'm not here to claim that I have all the answers. I even say that in my intro. I don't have all the answers, but I am here to say this. The people experiencing their gift deserve to be centered, not interpreted into silence, or not interpreted into a framework, and not shaped into something more comfortable, more digestible, and not used as confirmation of something we already believe. They deserve to be heard in their authentic self fully. And that means we have to be willing to listen with our whole body, not just our ears, without needing the story to belong to us or a system that's already pre-constructed. This question that I'm asking is not, what is telepathy? I'm asking, are we willing to let it be what it is? Even if it doesn't fit what we've been taught or socialized to believe or indoctrinated to know. We also have to ask, who is the story being told for? And who is it built to include? Because not every space that says it's inclusive actually is. Ask me how I know. I'm a Black woman. I navigate spaces that, and when I show up and they say they're inclusive and they are not inclusive. And my experience, our experience that I had at that church made me question whether inclusion was really happening or if something else was.